in this episode, I want to learn a little bit more about you as a person, like specifically about your childhood, where you came from, and how you ended up in Yale and eventually into the world of finance.
Yeah, so that's a that's a loaded and a half question, man. Where do you want to start?
Let's start I guess a little bit about you, like specifically your childhood and your upbringing. I think you have an interesting
Yes.
story.
Yeah, so I do have a quite a unique background, I'd say, for finance in particular, for life generally, but for finance in particular. I grew up, extremely poor, certainly by American standards, probably poorest family in the country at one point. We were constantly being evicted. My parents they struggled with drug and alcohol abuse throughout my childhood, so we were constantly being evicted, constantly in the food bank lines, et cetera, et cetera. You can kind of paint a picture of what that struggle was like on the inner city. But ultimately, I took the opportunities that were given to me at those times, those rare opportunities, and we took advantage of them. I think kind of a short story. Kind of one of the main reasons I'm here sitting in this chair today is actually sort of the traditional making lemons out of lemonade, if you will. We got evicted the summer heading into my third grade year. And as a function of how the zoning system worked in St. Louis, we were living in East St. Louis at the time, which at the time was the murder capital of the country. We were living in a really rough neighborhood there, and we got evicted, and we had to live in this homeless shelter. Heading into my third grade year, and as a function of how zoning worked in the St. Louis metropolitan area, I wound up having to go to school, or getting to go to school rather, at this sort of charter school called Del Mar Harvard. Harvard, like our rival up in Boston or in Cambridge. And so that 1 year of like advanced accelerated learning, again, I'm living in a homeless shelter with drug addicts and homeless people for this entire year. That year of living in the homeless shelter while I'm going to this school and getting that world class elementary school education really set me up on this like very accelerated kind of course, if you will, for the rest of my childhood. And when I went back to my normal school district, and even when we moved to Seattle, heading into my sixth grade year, I was still a grade or two grades ahead. Pick your course or your curriculum than the rest of my classmates. And so I was always in the accelerated programs, AP programs, et cetera, all throughout high school. And, in terms of how I got to Yale, and I'll be quick, obviously wound up being a pretty good football player. When you grow up in Seattle, everybody wants to play for the University of Washington. That's the powerhouse program there in the what was the Pac-10 back then for the young kids there. But it was I was starting to get recruited by Ivy League coaches, and shout out to my coach, high school football coach, Coach Burgraff. I didn't know anything about the Ivy League. We didn't have the internet at home. It's not anything that's something that you learn about when you're growing up in the inner city. So I was actually shocked when schools like Yale and Harvard started to come recruit me, because I had no idea who they were. I'm living in Seattle, University of Washington, the big schools out there. If you want to go to a nice school, it would have been Stanford or something like that. So it was kind of quite the shock when I saw schools from New Haven, Connecticut, and Cambridge, et cetera, recruiting me. But anyway, thank you to Coach Burgraff for sending my VHS tape to those colleges, and ultimately kind of catalyzed that process. But to wrap it up, this is sort of like late in the recruiting process, my senior year, and Mr. McGowan, who's our AP Marine Biology teacher at high school, who also was coincidentally the head of marine biology at the University of Washington. We had this program where college professors would come and teach courses in our school. He pulls me aside and he's like, "Hey man, you're always getting pulled out of my class. Like you're halfway here, halfway out. All these coaches keep pulling you out of my class. Like you need to figure out where you're going so like you can be here and be present." And he's like, "So what school do you think you want to go to?" And I'm like, "I don't know, man. Like, I'm really waiting on the University of Washington, Coach Gilbertson to offer me a scholarship. They said they're getting close to the process. We're getting close to that part of the process." And he pulls me aside and he goes, "I'll do you a favor, man. I'm going to make sure Coach Gilbertson doesn't offer you a scholarship." Because he knew at the time, and really God bless his heart for kind of realizing this, that I had no frame of reference to understand what a life-changing experience Yale would have been. And he told me, "Hey, look, man, I'm not going to tell you where to go, but I'm going to give you some advice. Go to Yale." And that was the school that was recruiting me the hardest at the time. So shout out to Coach Burgraff, Dr. McGowan, and all the other wonderful people. Miss Peck, my third grade elementary school teacher, for being the reason I'm sitting in this chair today. So thanks for having me, and thanks for the question.
Nice. Yeah, so I guess you had many, mentors like throughout your young days in school and in football, like, do you mentor now? And then if so, like, how important do you think like those people were? Like, were they critical to your success in school and football and life in general?
Yeah, man. So I don't believe you can be successful without great mentors. Like, what is success, right? Like, success is a combination of preparation and luck. Like, who teaches you? No one controls the luck factor, but you can certainly control your preparation, and how you prepare is, in my opinion, something that is gained by osmosis, gained by good instruction from watching the people who do it well on a consistent basis. So yes, mentoring is a very big part of my life. I co-head the Yale football mentorship program to this day. Certainly involved a number of community outreach organizations, not the least of which is Project Come Up, which is something I'm very proud of as well. So yeah, I'm a big believer that the best path out of the kinds of environments that I grew up in, drug and alcohol abuse, constantly getting evicted, physical abuse, obviously a lot of the stuff that comes along with drug and alcohol abuse, that stuff was, it was a really challenging environment to grow up in. Obviously you had friends who get murdered in gang violence and things like that. It sucked. I'm not gonna lie to you. It sucks growing up poor. It sucks growing up in the inner city. But at the end of the day, we can always give back and pay it forward. And so that's a very big part of my life now. It's a big part of my life. It will always be a big part of my life.